Sorry for the delay. The November 7th, 2016 meeting of the Carlynton School District Board of Directors is called to order. Do we have somebody who can help us out? Yeah. Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Ledesma. Here. Director O'Brien. Here. Director Richardson. Here. Director Zolensky. Here. Director Shaw.
She's not here tonight.
Director Hanshaw.
Here.
Director Dugan. Here. Director Apple.
Here.
Director Schreiber.
Here. There's a time at the beginning of each meeting where we allow the public to comment on any agenda item before the board. Is there anyone who wishes to speak about the agenda item tonight? Seeing no one express interest, we'll move on. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 17th Finance Committee meeting as presented, and also the minutes of the October 17th voting meeting as presented. Do I have such a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Not to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I'll report that we had an executive session prior to this meeting where we discussed negotiations, personnel, and real estate. Thank you. And I'll turn to Dr. Pfeiffer for the administrative report.
Thank you. I'd like to make a recommendation out at this point, because we have a little reception over there for Ms. Herman to celebrate her birthday. I'd like to take a break, invite the public. Michelle's been a board secretary for some time, been a Carlynton resident and a dedicated employee of the district. So we have a little cake and actually for her. Well, for everybody that's here, but before the ice cream melts, you should probably take advantage of that.
So moved. Briefly recess. 10 minutes? 10 minutes?
Really, every
I'd
day.
like to call the meeting back to order. Congratulations again for a successful birthday. Yes, exactly. And I'll go back to Dr. Pfeiffer for continuation of the administrative reports.
Thank you. I'd like to lead off, I'd like to change the order a little bit, but I want to lead off with a meeting we had with the Secretary of Ed a couple Fridays ago with at Patton on eastern end of town going towards Tarentum. And we being all superintendents in the Commonwealth, received an email from the Secretary regarding the inaccuracy of the school performance profile data. And the school performance profile has been a hot topic with the superintendents for a while because of how things are weighted in the scale. Mike Turzai from Allegheny County has a proposal to use the NOCTI, which is an industry-based test for those kids to be able to substitute that instead of Keystone. And that's in the legislature. I think that'll get passed. I think that'll help. But there's just things in the rankings that, depending on how wealthy the school is or what types of programs you offer, can help you or hurt you. And as such, it doesn't reflect everything, and there's a lot of feel that it's too heavily weighted on the PSSA, on those particular testable subjects, and not on, counseling programs you provide kids, how a kid does in art, how a kid does in music, how a kid does in social studies, and so forth. So there's just a lot of debate. How many advanced placement classes you can offer versus non. If you offer international baccalaureate, you get more weights. So it's been back and forth with that. And when we had a meeting, and Pedro Rivera was there, Deputy Secretary of STEM, as well as a representative from SAS. And the reason why they pulled the scores is there was an error with the special needs students distribution on the test. And they had to go back and they caught it. But they caught it Tuesday night, and the SPP was supposed to be released the following Wednesday, so everything got held up. So we all went to this meeting on Friday, just about 2 weeks ago, and we went over the scores. Subsequently, there was an article in the Signal item which compared our PSSA scores with South Fayette and Chartiers Valley. But the way that data was presented wasn't entirely accurate either, because we're classified as a junior, senior high school, and we have a different category than, say, a school is just a junior high or a school is just a high school and so forth. So one of the things as we were discussing it, and George had some concerns about it, and other of you on the board have, were, how are those rated? How do we compare? So how, if you take the 8th grade out of the junior, senior high designation, how actually do they compare with other similar schools, and how do our high school compare? So I asked Mr. Mantich, our curriculum person and data person, to go through and do a presentation, prepare one for tonight for the board to address that. So I'd like to jump ahead and go to Ed's report, and then Ed can answer additional questions you have about how the scoring is arranged and so forth. At this meeting, you couldn't send designations, you could only send certificates. So it was interesting. And people were all there from Butler and Westmoreland and Green and so forth. So Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Pfeiffer. Today's presentation, we're talking about the assessment summary report of the Carlynton School District. Each one of you have a binder, as you can see. I'll be brief. But he's absolutely correct when he talks about the school performance profile. It gives a comprehensive overview of the student's academic performance. In every school district, every charter school, cyber school, and career technology center. And it is based largely on the results of the PSSA and the Keystone exams. Other factors considered are graduation rates, attendance, participation in advanced placement courses or international baccalaureates. Even the PSAT participation kind of gets involved in this whole situation. And advanced scores on the state and industry-based NACI tests and assessments of that nature.
Hey, Ed, if I
Yes.
just interrupt, I apologize for interrupting. We have one very new board member and a couple of board members that have only been on for less than a year.
Okay.
Would you mind just quickly going back and talking about what is PSAT, what are Keystones, how often are they given, why are they given, like just a real quick high level?
Okay, but first of all, the PSSAs are the tests that are given to the students in grades 3 through 8. Okay, they're based on the PA core standards, and they're given in mathematics, English language arts, and in grades 4 and 8, they get science.
And the Common Core standards are a group of,
The PA core standards were derived from the state legislature, which were basically derived about 85% consistent with the Common Core state standards that were adopted a few years ago by the federal government.
so it's curriculum that the state suggests that you follow.
It's what the kids should be able to know and do as a result of our instruction. They'll never tell you what they're going to teach in your school districts, but they're going to say there's this test you're going to take, and this is what they're going to be assessed on, and it's like the minimum competency examination for 3rd grade math or 3rd grade ELA. So you're going to be basically judged on how well your students perform on this common test throughout the school. The Keystone exams are end-of-course tests given at the conclusion of the Algebra 1, at the conclusion of biology, and in 10th grade literature. And these tests, again, are based on the PA standards, which they call the anchor standards and eligible content of these particular tests. So, the difference between the PSSA and the Keystone exams is that you can take the Keystone exam as many times as you want, up until your 2nd semester of your junior year. And at this time, the state is a moratorium on the graduation requirement up until Senate Bill 880. The class of 2017, which would be these students right now, they would have to pass all 3 of those tests in order to graduate from high school. And if they haven't passed them by their 2nd semester of their junior year, then they'd have to take something called the project-based assessment to demonstrate their proficiency in the minimum competencies of algebra, biology, and literature. but because of Senate Bill 880, that got pushed back into the class of 2019, and we're hoping that something's gonna come along between now and then, that they're gonna change the plan a little bit like Dr. Pike was talking about. Because it's a different way to do things. However, even though they're still not counting towards the graduation requirement, they are all rolled into the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile. They still count. The teacher evaluation, Act 82, they still count. So does the PSA. Just not towards graduation of the students at this time. Also involved in it, of course, the advanced placement courses. These are the ones that give them college credit. At the end of the conclusion, they will take what they call the AP exam, the advanced placement exam. Where if they score a 3 or higher, they will receive 3 college credits in, calculus or U.S. history. I think you still have biology now, American government. Okay, so they have courses they'll have to take, and once they pass the test with a 3 or above from the College Board, and these basically count. They count those towards our PSPP scores, Pennsylvania School Performance Profile. Now, the PSAT, okay, comes kind of further down the road. It's what we give our kids here in 11th grade. It's like a practice SAT exam, the College Board exam that they have. And it's also is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifier for the country, for the College Board. And we give it to all the 11th graders. 10th graders who wish to pay for the exam early. And we give it to all the 8th graders. Now here's the funny thing when it comes to the PSPP, we'll talk about this later on. The amount of kids that we have taking that test, we get points for it. Not how well they do, just as long as they participate. So why don't we give it to them? And we do. Give it to all the 11th graders. So our percentage is high enough, we get the points we need for taking the PSAT. And there are also scores in it, which we'll talk about later on, for the SAT. The College Board exam. How many of our students score 15, 50 or higher on the 3 tests? That is factored into the PSPP in some way, shape, or form. And as we go through, we'll see what the percentages are as we go through. Any questions about all the tests that are involved in the
One quick one. Is the PSDP do they provide you with the scorecard on how you can gain points? And do they break down each piece and say if your students are at this level, you get 12 points? Do they break it out with various?
As a matter of fact, if you look in your binder, there's a tab in there called PSPP calculations. I did that.
And let me just add to piggyback on what he says. The building principals and myself, when the building principals evaluate the teachers and I evaluate the building principals, there's an online form, and you can't complete that for the yearly evaluation until the SPP is calculated. So then you plug it in and it calculates what the score is. And that's attributed to teachers in single buildings. There's a way to do it for teachers in multiple buildings, but that's mandated. So the SPP affects everybody's evaluation overall. Whether they rate deficient, distinguished, needs improvement, or failing is determined on that. So that's all laid out. But because it's such a delay in getting it out, where before building principals could evaluate teachers in June, how'd you do it this year? Now you gotta wait till October, early November, because they had this delay to get people's evaluations out. So that's just a side piggyback on what you mentioned.
And also, do we get credit for the early, like the sophomores and the 8 kids? For those kids taking it?
No, they only go to that 11th grade class. So basically, when you look at the PSPP, and it's in that section of your binder, it says participation for the 11th grade students, and I think ours was like 77%. So we kind of received all the points because of somehow we have it.
So then Parkway kids, our Parkway kids are included.
The Parkway kids are included because part of this is going to be the NOCTI exam.
What is it? Spell that out.
NOCTI.
Our kids do very well in the
They do.
knocking. And that knocking score is added to our overall SPP.
And what does that stand
National, occupational, career,
Technology.
technology,
Inventory.
inventory. I believe it really is.
for? Sorry, I asked
I'm a superintendent of record
It's
there.
a compliment, it's a compliment.
Well, I guess we're doing all right then.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just like a quick
Yes.
step back, so these assessments that we do annually for the school performance profile, this has been longstanding in education, like these benchmarks for performance, so this isn't just the advent of core curriculum.
Well, yes and no, okay? Just to get off topic a little bit, when we start talking about the PSSAs, okay, the PSSA started back in 1999, 2000, back in that area there, okay? Recently, they've changed. So, starting back in 2015 was the new PSSA, which came out for the new PA core. So at that point in time, you really cannot even compare scores from 2015 to 2014 anymore because it wasn't the same test, it wasn't the same content, you know, it wasn't even the same rigor level.
Right, understandably, so the assessments can change, but I just
Right.
mean this concept.
The concept of
assessment has long been,
of
and like even
standards-based,
when we were
yes.
kids, we were doing these annual tests.
Right.
And so that's just something like I want the broad school district families to understand, where they're getting mad, like we're teaching to the test. I was like, well, these measures and this procedure has been in place for a long time in all states.
Right, we've been dealing with the PSSA, like I said, back in 1999, 2000. Like I said, it's evolved, it's changed, and we've kind of like started over, if you think about it. Because once they got rid of the legacy standards and they brought in the PA core, everything started all over again. And as we look at data, it's kind of, we went back to where we were at the level of 1999, 2000 when we first instituted that particular test. But the funny thing is, when you look at the PA core standards, our students are learning more and at higher levels than they were back in 1999, 2000, all the way up till they changed to the PA core. But does the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile, the way we're being rated, actually reflect that? I don't think the public understands it. That our kids are actually learning more and at higher levels
And sooner.
and sooner than they were before.
And
all
I
they
don't
do
think
is-
that's said enough.
Right,
So I
and
just wanted
and
to
they,
confirm that.
in the public, and in the articles you see in the newspaper, I don't think it reflects that enough in what we're doing. So how can our kids be learning more at higher levels at a sooner rate? And what we mean by that is content that we used to teach back in 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade is now being taught in 4th, 5th, and 6th. And they didn't say to us, back when they instituted the PA core standards, that we're gonna start laying it in the grades K1, 2. And then a couple years later, it's gonna be 3, 4, 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9. No, they didn't do that. They just dumped it and said everybody do it at the same time. That was their plan at the beginning, way back when they brought this plan out. But delays came in and questions came in, and all of a sudden they just rolled it out all at one time. So now they kind of put us in a bind because now how do you make up for the content that they didn't get back in 5th grade, 4th grade? You know, instead they're now sitting in 6th and 7th grade because it all got pushed down. And later on, we'll talk about how we're addressing that issue here at the Carlynton School District, because we do have to make up for something.
Is there any adjustment for the school district that has, say, high poverty level, higher than ours? That there's no adjustment, so we're compared to what we're saying?
We're compared to Upper St. Clair. That's kind of where the fallacy comes in. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later. And what I'm trying to get involved with right now is not only how do they score the PSP, because we all kind of have right now, there's 5 different indicators. 40% is about academic achievement. That's straight proficiency rates, regardless of demographic, regardless of socioeconomic, straight proficiency. 40%. Then they talk about indicators of closing the achievement gap. You have the closing the achievement gap for all students, and you have closing achievement gap for the historically underperforming students. Those are the students that have been classified as economically disadvantaged, that are English language learners, or have an IEP because they have some sort of intellectual disability. So we're responsible for closing the achievement gap for both of those groups, and you get 5% for each. Then there's the indicators of academic growth, which we call PBOS. We'll talk about a little bit more in detail in a little bit. That's 40%. And then there's extra credit points up to 7 with little different categories we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's talk about that 40%, the first one. The percent of proficient or advanced on a Pennsylvania System of School Assessment, your PSSA, your Keystone exams in mathematics, reading, literature, science, biology, and we used to have writing, but we don't have writing anymore. Writing is now part of the ELA. The percent of competent or advanced on your NOCCI test. That's all part of it. Proficient or advanced on a PSSA grade 3 reading if you are a school that has a grade 3. If you're a school that doesn't have a grade 3, this doesn't factor in. We'll talk about configurations in a little bit. And your SAT, ACT college benchmarks. Closing the achievement gap. Our goal that's been set for us is we have to close 1/2 of the achievement gap over a 6-year period.
How do you define achievement? What does that mean?
Well, what they do, and just to make the mathematics real easy, let's say, for example, that we have a 70% proficiency rate, which means the gap between that and 100% is 30. That's our achievement gap. Take half of that, which is 15, and divide it by 6, and we're going to have about 1.8 a year that we have to do. If we meet that benchmark, we get all the points. If we don't reach that benchmark, we get a percentage of those points by how much of it we actually closed. They do that for both the historically low-performing students and the all, including the all student category as well. And because we are a junior, senior high school, we have to deal with not only the PSSA, but the Keystone exam as well. So when you were talking about the newspaper articles that compare us to Upper St. Clair, or to Chartiers Valley, or to South Fayette, they're just a high school. The only thing that counts towards the PSPC for their score is their Keystone exam. Their middle school bears the brunt of the PSSAs, the test. But normally you don't see the middle schools in the newspaper. They always talk about the high school. Then we have PBOS growth. That's another 40%. Growth is involved in everything. It's involved in the teachers' evaluations, Act 82. Growth is where they are at this moment, last year's test scores, or their history of test scores, and where they ended up at the end of this year. Growth, according to Pennsylvania, is 1 year's worth of growth for 1 year's worth of education. So they're going to give you a projected score based on the 8th grade, or 5th through 7th grade. They're going to give you from the 6th grade score, you're going to have a projected score what you're going to do in the 7th grade. You meet that, you exceed that, you not exceed that. If you meet it, you make growth. And they take the teacher's average of, all the students that they have they met the growth standard? And they take all of our students and say, have they met the growth standard? And that's going to count for 40% of our PSSA. Based on, again, the PSSAs in mathematics, ELA, and literature, science, biology, and algebra, because we are junior senior high school. Then the other indicators, graduation rate, promotion rate, attendance rates, advanced placement, not necessarily how well they do for this extra credit is if we have them. So if we have an advanced placement course or a dual enrollment course in all 4 disciplines, math, science, social studies, and English, we get all points. We don't have to have anybody enrolled. But as long as we have them available, we can get extra credit points. And of course, again, the PSSA plans plan participation. As long as we have a very high number of our 11th graders take that test at least one time, we get extra credit points.
And who keeps track of all these calculations? Who does the calculations? Harrisburg?
Well, we have to send all the data to them.
Yeah.
So the data points they get for like the PSAT, they get from the College Board.
Okay.
The data they get for the ACT, they get from the ACT. The SAT scores they'll get from the College Board.
Let's say, for instance, this stuff here, it could be miscalculated, which I think it was.
Not this.
Wasn't this?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is pretty clear
But
because
how do you check on if they miscalculate and set us at a lower than we are?
well, I verified
You
that.
watch it. Okay.
Yeah, I watched it.
That's good.
And we did find an error before they even found the
That was
second
pretty
error.
significant too.
Which one? Not the one from last year, but there was a second one even this year. That there's something wasn't calculated right.
You know, and the thing, we're so small, George, you know, if you're looking at around 120 kids to 100 kids per class level, going back, it doesn't take a lot of kids to move the needle one way or the other. And that's the heartening news from some of this, that we should be able to go back, identify kids, and implement some strategies to try to move those kids in a particular standard to get them where they need to be.
So we keep a very close eye on it. Even before the PSPT comes out, they give us a review window, and I go ahead and I calculate them out, and I make sure they are where they're supposed to be based on the data, the raw data they give us. Like I said, this year we found, I can't remember exactly what the data point that was missing, but we brought it to their attention, and as they were reviewing that, I think they found that second one as they were doing that. So, you know, we make sure that, you know, we stay on top of the data here, that we, you know, because like you said, 1 student, 2 students, that makes the whole world. And as we see later on, when we start talking about data, you're gonna look at us compared to a lot of other pieces of data, and you're gonna say, gee, we're talking about 1 or 2 kids. Because that's how we are. 1 or 2 kids puts us where we need to be. So, we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. And again, the extra credit for advanced placement are there. And I just, you know, you have them in your binder, so those are listed for the extra credit points. Again, we talked a little bit about growth. Okay, growth is equal to the current achievement or current results compared to all prior achievement results. The achievement being measured by a quality assessment such as the PSSA or the Keystone exam. Again, growth is 1 year's worth of growth for 1 year's worth of education. Now, here's the thing where it gets confusing. And I wanted to bring this up because the PSPP has different building configurations depending on what kind of school you are. But nobody ever hears about this. They just say, here's a school, and here's their score, and here's this other school, and here's the score. And you're not even compared to the same data points. So I put the 4 up here. There's a K-8 schools without grade 3. Those are the schools that would be like tertiary primary set, K1 and 2. They wouldn't have a grade 3. So therefore, as you're going down the academic achievement, they won't have a grade 3 reading. So they have to redistribute the points somewhere else for that. Or you have a K-8 school with a grade 3. That'd be like our elementary schools. So their mathematics, they get 7.5% of that score that goes towards the PSPP for math. They get 7.5 for science, but you notice that reading is double. It counts twice as much as the other 2. Fair, not fair, but it counts double. Why? Because when they transpose to the new PSSA with the PA core, they dropped the writing. It used to be each was 7.5. 7.5 for math, 7.5 for reading, 7.5 for science, 7.5 for writing. They dropped the writing test, it's called ELA. They moved that up, so now that counts double. in all the categories. Fair, not fair, it is what it is. And again, if you're grade 3 reading, like our elementary schools, 10 points go for that 3rd grade reading. They believe 3rd grade reading is a very good indicator how the student's going to perform well down the line in their academic performance. So not only does reading count for the extra 15%, but if you're a K-3 school or a K-6 school, now the 3rd grade reading counts even more.
And let me jump in there too, Ed, and Marcia, if you could chime in. 3rd grade's chosen because at that point they figure kids are learning to read up to 3rd, and then developmentally then they're reading to learn 3rd and on.
Right, they're looking at that reading to learn versus learning to read, right?
Right.
So by 3rd grade, they should be able to, theoretically, be able to comprehend and write and,
And that's why
analyze text.
And the middle scores really don't turn into anything for school performance profile, because those really assess a kid's ability to be able to comprehend and put words together. So if there was a question why 3rd grade and not say 1st grade, that's why. 3rd grade's the year.
And then you get the K-12 schools. That's like our junior, senior high. Yes.
So we have the 4 different.
4 different configurations.
Is there any statistical difference? Like, can I say that the first one is always so many points higher than the second one, or are they distributed across the same? In other words, they're measured differently, but does it show up differently in the scores?
Well, it will if you're in an elementary school that doesn't have a grade 3.
But I mean, can we say that? I mean, can you actually look at the score and say, look,
It's going to depend.
this group of schools are always going to have a 3rd grade measurement because their scores are always here. If you don't have a 3rd grade measurement, you're always in the 1st bucket because they're always going to be high. Or is it, at the end of the day, like they've found a way to sort of normalize?
Can I say, for example, the K-2 schools that don't have grade 3 are always going to be statistically higher than the other schools? I can't say that because it's going to be dependent upon how well they do on their exams. But you can see there's a different configuration between the two. You know, so if they would compare, let's say, Crafton Elementary School to Chartiers Valley Primary School, we're comparing apples to oranges. Even though they both get the same PSPP score, they're not calculated exactly the same way or the same groups. Now the K-12 school. Yeah, what was it? I keep forgetting about people behind me, so please, yeah, sure.
And I know we're not supposed to do this, but I'm supposed to wait till the end. So before you were talking about the more higher levels and sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Did that roll out in increments, or that rolled out at the same time across the state for every district?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't intended to be that way. It wasn't intended to be that way.
Okay, so
It's just the way it happened to turn out.
so if we compare like schools across the state
Mm-hmm.
to Carlynton, like schools, how do we rate?
I'm getting
Okay.
there.
See?
Actually, I didn't go
Already
across the
walking down
state,
that path, Coach.
but I did the 5-county area, the ones that are closest to us. And I did that, yeah, we're gonna get to that. She's stealing my thunder over here. It's okay. So then you get to school, the K-12 schools, like us, we're junior, senior high school. So we're gonna be basically configured under 7.5 for math, 15% for the reading and literature, 7.5 for science, 2.5 for the NOCD test that our kids take, which they do very well with. If we would have a grade 3, which we don't, we get 2.5 for that, but if not, it rolls over to the next one, which is 5% for the NOCD test, and the 5% for the SAT, the kids that score 1550 or higher. So they'll all roll out to be 40%. So, how do we compare to other schools? You know, what configuration? We have one configuration for 7 through 12, where some of the schools we get compared to are just 9 to 12. And some are even 10 to 12. They're traditional high schools and traditional junior high schools. The closing achievement gap, which you can see, I just put this in there, between that one and the lowest performing, they're standard across the board. That 10% is the same no matter what configuration you have. And then the other academic portions, the graduation rate for high schools or junior, senior high school. If you do not have a high school graduation rate because you're a middle school or an elementary school, then you talk about your retention rate. So Carlynton Junior Senior High School has to deal with a graduation rate. Traditional high schools deal with a graduation rate. If you're a middle school, you deal with your promotion. How many kids are retained? And if, of course, you're elementary school, you don't have advanced placement or baccalaureate or PSATs, so everything kind of rolls up for them. So everybody's going to get their 10% at that particular time for the other indicators of academic success. And then you have your points for extra credit. Those are based on the advanced students, so how high or how advanced or how many advanced students you have in all the particular categories. Again, Chartiers Valley, South Fayette, Upper St. Clair, Hampton, a lot of schools like that. They just have the Keystone exams. So anything that goes in there is how advanced were they on the Keystone exam. And when it comes to mathematics, which I know most about, I will tell you right now, the Keystone exams in mathematics are a lot easier than the 8th grade PSSA. They're not the same anchors and standards. They're not the same. They're more rigorous. But 2/3 of our mathematics PSSA or PSPP score comes from PSA, 2/3. Where these other schools we can compare to sometime, they're not there. Okay, so we have the science, we have the NOCTI test for how many people are advanced on that one, and the percent of the grade 12 cohort that is 3 or higher on at least one of the AP exams that they're doing. So there's all the different configurations, which nobody ever talks about. Right? You just read the paper. This school got a PSPP of this score, this school got this one got that. Nobody's ever said, well, what configuration are you? And how are you comparing to them?
And to be fair, it's difficult for us to understand.
Yeah.
For a newspaper,
Exactly.
I don't know how to do it. So.
I was privileged enough to talk to 2 reporters when the stuff came out, and we had nice long conversations, and that was the feeling that I had, that we needed to talk more about this than, where our scores are. Do you understand this? And they really didn't, and they were kind of, well, sorry, I have a deadline in 2 hours, can we get moving kind of thing. So
I wish he were here today. Jim Spezzalek, he was one.
well, the people that I spoke to were very nice people, and they really want to learn more.
Did they call you or you called them?
They called here, and they kind of were directed to me through Mrs. Herman. And I called them back, and we had nice conversations on where we were.
I think get our contact and preempted even. I think
Yeah.
there are 2 who are supposed to come.
Yeah, but they're never, it's always, can you call me back? Boy, I'd love to have the questions in advance, but they won't, they can give it to me.
Well, I mean, knowing that.
But knowing this, I'm able to
How
talk.
this is absent.
You're not seeing that.
Yeah?
You're not seeing that.
Ed, before you move on,
Yes.
did we not get credit then for AP tests taken in the junior year?
It only goes up to
Only for seniors.
only for the seniors, and it's entirely composite, so the scores in the junior year count.
But we only get credit
Right.
here if they're 3 or higher as a senior.
No. Anywhere in their career.
Oh, okay.
So when you take that senior cohort, how many of them have at least one, and they get the count? Okay, so where were our PSPP scores? Okay, Carnegie was at 70.4. Crafton Elementary was 66.8, and Carlynton Junior Senior High School was 69.8912. I took it out, I'm a geek, so I say it. I took it out to 6 decimal places because I want to argue that we should have been rounded up. But they don't round it this way, by the way, they truncate. I didn't know that.
Ed,
I learned that, yes.
Ed, with Carnegie's higher poverty level, why is Carnegie such a good score?
Well, when you compare the test scores and you look at how they put everything together, although Crafton might have higher achievement levels in that top 40%, Carnegie might have had higher growth rates. They had more room to grow. Yeah, people forget about those growth rates.
So that article explained nothing, absolutely
Nor could they.
nothing.
And nor could they.
Or could they?
Yeah.
They didn't have 10 pages to.
Yeah, for them to have to get through all this, you know, you'd have to have like, you know, fill up the PPG arena and say, okay, we're gonna tell the whole area about this, and that's not gonna happen.
But the thing that's irritating, George, isn't so much the single item that has a smaller audience. It's when that gets into Pittsburgh Business Times, it goes out all over the place.
Was it in business?
It will be when they come out of that edition, when they rank all the schools.
But
Take the raw numbers and.
the business time will be comparing apples and oranges.
They'll take the raw numbers and they'll share the raw numbers.
Now, at the bottom it says, see attached to the PSPP calculations for all the schools. In your binders, I have a tab in there. I've calculated it all. I mean, I broke it down, everything you need to know about the PSPP was afraid to ask, how they calculated, where our extra credit was, you know, how it was multiplied together to get this number, the whole 9 years. I didn't want to spend a lot of time in this presentation doing that, but there it's in great detail. And not only do I have it in great detail by building, but I also explain closing the achievement gap for both the underperforming students and the all student groups in all 3 tests, and our goal marks for this particular year. Because when they started with the new PSSA scores, they reset the benchmark year in 2015. So now we're only, when it comes to PSSA, we're only in this was our first year of that 6-year cycle that I talked about. So you'll see down through some of the data points that you'll have down there, where our benchmark is, where we are right now, where our gap was, what we should have had, what we got, and how they gave us the points of what we have. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going over it. It's very detailed. That's why I provided your binder for you.
And in the sense that the sports world at high school looks at the district size and groups them based on size and says, okay, we're gonna have the larger schools play larger schools and the smaller schools play smaller schools. They try to separate them by size. Is there any kind of accounting for size or demographics?
I'm glad you asked.
Oh, perfect.
I went to the 5 county areas and said, okay, where are the schools that are configured like us?
And is that chart here?
Huh? Yes.
That chart here. It's
Yeah,
someplace.
actually, I flipped it out past,
That's it.
I flipped it out past the PSPP calculations and kind of says, well, you know, how are we doing kind of thing. You know, and here's all the schools that are very similar to us, even in size, even in configuration. They're all junior, senior high schools. And they come from the 5 county area, because I didn't want to start getting on the other side of the state, but there's 17 of them. You know, we have Chartiers Houston. They're sitting at the top list, they're at 380. They're about 10 points higher than we are. But if you look at all the rest of them, you know, Red Bank Valley, Burgettstown, Riverview. Riverview area has a very high demographic area out there. And they're at 72.2. Lincoln and Elwood City, Carlynton, we're at 69.8. Salzburg, Allegheny Clarion, Keystone, Springdale, right up the hill, 67.8. Western Beaver, Northgate, all below us. Leechburg, South Allegheny, right down the river. You know, how do we compare? We're a little bit above the average right now. But everybody's experiencing exactly the same thing we are. We started the new test. This is the first year that they're going to put the PSSAs in under the PA core. And this is where everybody's sitting. They don't want to be here. I mean, you know, we're at 69.9. But if you take away the score itself, how do we rank amongst this people like ours? We're above the average.
Middle of the pack. Or
We're middle to above. So that's more of a comparison of how we're configured, you know, with a little bit skewed demographics, but still, where do we sit with people like us? And that's kind of where we are. And that is also in your packet. So how are we doing? Let's compare the district to the state. When you compare to the state of Pennsylvania, you get rid of all the demographics, because now we're talking about every kid in the state of Pennsylvania that took these tests. In English language arts, we're 1 point above the state average. Mathematics, as a district, we're almost 1 point above the state average. Science, just a little bit below the state average. But that's how we are as a district. Again, in English language arts, I put the district last year to this year because that's the 2 times we took the PSSA. We increased, a little bit, modestly, but we increased. And again, we're still above the state average. A little bit. Mathematics, still a little bit above the state average. And we're 5 points higher than we were the year before. We're moving right up. Science. Again, we increased a little bit from 1 year to the next, but we're still a little bit below the state average in science. Remember, science is only grade 4 and grade 8. Then we say, okay, well, how are we doing by grade level as a district? Grade 3, we're 15 points above the state average. Grade 3. Okay. Grade 4, about 6 points above the state average. Grade 5, 5 points above the state average. Grade 6, 4 points above the state average. Middle school, we have some issues. But 10 points below the state average in ELA and about 11 points in grade. So now we're starting to see some pockets of things we need to work on. Mathematics, same way. Grade 3, well above the state average. Grade 4, 11 points above the state average. Grade 5, right about the state average. Grade 6, we're less than 1 percentage point, so statistically we're right at the state average for that one. And again, in grade 7 and grade 8, 7 points and 12 points below the state average. Again, we're starting to see pockets of things that need to address. And in science, grade 4, 4 points above the state average, and grade 8, we're about 10 points below the state. Again, we're looking at pockets of things we need to work on. It's all starting to become pretty clear where our attention's going to be going. Carnegie, talk about the school level. Well, Carnegie, in language arts, they're right at the state average, 14 points above in mathematics, and about 12 points above in science. Looking from 1 year to the next, in English language arts, Carnegie dropped a little bit from 1 year to the next, about 6 points. But I have to explain this because they had an outlier in the year before grade 5. They had such an extremely high value in their ELA at that particular time. They had almost 81%. Yeah, that was a statistical outlier, which is kind of skewing this a little bit. But as you can state, even at 60.2, the state average is 60.4. We're still at the state average, even though we dropped a little bit for that statistical outlier. But they're still holding on to their own. Mathematics, again, they went up 6 points from 1 year to the next. And they're still 12 points above the state average. That's all the kids across the state taking this particular test. And in science, state average is 67. They dropped about a point. So when you're talking about somebody at Carnegie's dropping a point, what are we talking about? One student. One student represents 2% and you have 50 kids in class. We're talking about one student, so that's pretty much, they stayed the same from 1 year to the next, which is still going to be 12 points above the state average. How are we doing? How are we doing? How we compare to everybody in the state. And again, Carnegie, English language arts. Again, grade 3, we're up 6 points. Grade 4, they're about less than 1%, so they're probably pretty much at the state average. Again, grade 5, about a point, talking about 1 or 2 students, right above the state average. And grade 6, we're about 4 points below. What are we talking about? We're talking about 2 students. 2 students. Or we'd be right at the state average. Mathematics, again, 11 points up in grade 3, 14 points up in grade 4, a point up in grade 5, and 5 points up in grade 6, all above the state average. And in science, they're up 3 points above the state average. How's Carnegie doing? They're holding their own. But you don't see that in the newspaper. They don't get that fine. They don't get that fine. Yes.
One thing I was thinking about was, maybe people that move in and out of the district. Say somebody comes in grade 3. We haven't had them for kindergarten, first, second grade. They're tested with everyone else in third grade. As if they were our kid all along. There's no difference. They don't take into account anything like
They
that.
do.
They do?
Yeah. Enrollment prior to October 1st. So if we're enrolled here prior to October 1st, they consider them a full year enrolled student. They would count for it.
But what I'm saying though is, testing them on grade 3 level. We haven't had them K1 and 2. We're still getting.
We get them if they're here prior to October 1st. Because then they say that we have a whole year's worth of education which we can provide. So,
But to his point, if the foundation may or may not.
may or may not be there, but we're still responsible to them because they consider them a full year enrolled student as of October 1st. Now, after October 1st, it's a different story. We account for our accountability that we have to test them, so our participation rate depends upon them, but they won't count for us as towards our G grade this year. And then towards the 4th grade, we'll be here before October 1st, so they'll be as part of ours.
Say, for instance, that homeless kids that are coming in and out, is there any adjustment for them?
I think they're here after October 1st.
So there's, with all that turmoil in their lives, there's no adjustment.
Unfortunately. If they're here after October 1st, that's a different story. But that's kind of what they call the Pennsylvania business rules. That's what they go by. So then you get Crafton. Okay. Crafton, their proficiency rates were 77.1 for English language arts, which was 16 points above, almost 17 points above the state average. 52.9, they're talking about 10 points above in mathematics, and they were about 14 points above in science. Notice we talked about before, Carnegie had a higher PSPP score, but who has the higher proficiency rates? See how it works. See, just that one little number doesn't give you the entire picture of what's going on within the school district. Shocking. Again, if we go by, again, 15, 16, again, in English language arts, Crafton went up 5 points. Okay, and they're still above the state average, as you saw. Okay, in mathematics, they went up about almost a point, 1.1%. Still 10 points above the state average. And science, again, they dropped about 5 points, but still at 81.8, well above the state average in science as well. Again, kind of hard to wonder why they're doing so well academically, but their PSPP score is so much lower than Carnegie. Nobody takes into account of it. Again, we talk about growth rate, because one thing South Ed will always complain about the growth rate. How do you continue to grow students that are already performing well? That's tough to do.
That's unfair to them in that respect.
And in this case, for Crafton, it's unfair for them as well, because how do they continue to grow kids that are already high? But that doesn't come up in the newspaper. Again, if we go by grades, I mean, they're in your package, you can see it. We've increased, again, like we said, in English language arts, we're 24 points above in grade 3, which does make counts double, right? None of you get them for your achievement levels, but you also get them for that grade 3 part at the bottom. All right, 15, that's almost 17 points in grade 4, 11 points in grade 5, and 14 points in grade 6, all above the state average, doing very well. But again, what did we find out? Crafton got the lowest PSPP. Amazing. Mathematics, 16 points above the state average for grade 3, 2 points above in grade 4, at the state average for grade 5, 4 points below in grade 6. And in science, they're up about 5 points above the state average in crafting. How they doing? Team-wise, doing very well. But, look what happened. Okay, Carlynton Junior Senior High School. English Language Arts. We're about 12 points below in ELA. Mathematics, we're down about 18 there. And science, we're down about 20 points. But that encompasses both the Pennsylvania PSSAs and, actually, this doesn't count, excuse me, this does not account for the Keystone exam. This is just the PSSA. Somewhere later in the presentation, I'm going to get to that real quick if I can. When I start putting up the scores for the Keystone exam, 52% of our kids, by the time they're 11th graders in mathematics, are proficient on the exam. 71% in biology, and almost 80% of our kids are proficient in ELA. But again, you don't see those numbers in the newspaper. Okay, they just tell you, the PSP score. If we were a normal high school, this is what we'd be graded on, if we were just a normal high school. Right? Again, 80% of our kids.
So we'd be at the top next to Charters Houston.
We'd be a lot closer to what you
Yeah.
saw in the newspaper, absolutely. Because they're only scored on the Keystone exams. Again, 80% of our kids in literature are passing, 71% in biology, and we're even growing in mathematics up to 52%.
That's really impressive.
But that's not what you see in the newspaper. Okay, what you see is because of the new PSSA, I think they reported, wow, your mathematics scores are 24.7. That was only 7th and 8th grade.
And this is phenomenal data, and I think we should do this on a more regular basis, because this is hugely beneficial. I don't know, the other directors,
so
it's helpful. Something like that, one number, the 24% number.
Yeah.
In a future meeting, maybe we can dig deeper into that, and just as you gave us a nice outline of what that really means, I'd love to understand what that 24.7 really means. And you noted a couple of areas that you saw some things.
Yeah, and we're starting, when we looked at this, we were saying, okay, when we looked at this whole data situation, we had the teams, the data departments get together, we started finding pockets of things we need, to get better at. And right now, we're attacking those. Like in the mathematics at the junior, senior high school, we got a brand new curriculum. Okay, we have a brand new curriculum. We had to do some other things also at the high school to change things up a little bit, but we did that too. So we're not sitting on our laurels saying we're making strides to make the educational experience for our students a lot better to help them to achieve what they need.
Maybe we could have every couple of meetings a follow up on some of these topics, and you can come back and bring us more data and share some of the results.
Yeah, I'd love to, because like I said, I have this one, and we talked a little bit today on email. You asked a couple of questions. I brought this along, so maybe we could talk later about the things that you were asking me about. So we can talk about those. So that's kind of what I want to present today. How are we doing? Where are we? What's out there? Is it accurate to what we're actually doing in the school district? And as you can see here today, it really isn't accurate of what we are and who we are as a school district, how well our students are performing on these particular tests. And as long as our trends keep going up, which are showing right now, by the time our PSSA start leveling off, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, like they did the last time we started PSSA, we'll be back up into the levels that we were back then. And we'll be looking at our student success rates. And again, remember, our kids are also learning more at a quicker rate and at a higher level than they were back 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Can this be available on PDF website? Maybe like a brief bullet pointed synopsis of
Maybe we
these
can create a
highlights
summary.
that he can write to accompany it? So they don't leave it up to someone else to interpret, but he directly
It's a great idea.
says.
Is it possible to create a 4 or 5 page summary?
I
For me?
thought 2 page
2 or 3
bullet
pages.
points of these main
I think so. I think we look at some of the
I think
score.
we take a look at it, I'm sure with a little help from everybody, what we find important, we can narrow this down.
Because then I think that's good, gives the media people gratitude.
that they can hold these things and see your interpretation of what it means too, so that they are more knowledgeable.
Yeah, and like I said, I want to make sure that you folks could see, you know, you saw what was out there, and I know you had a lot of questions on your mind from what you saw in the newspaper. I'm hoping this kind of cleared up and said, well,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we bring the questions of the public, so this
Right.
is, we want the public to see it, not just us.
so.
You did a lot of hard work, and
Well, thank you.
just by your go public.
I was a math guy all my life, so, you know, you can call me the math geek if you want.
You seem a little excited.
We have a quick question from
Sure.
the audience, Tom.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The charts you were shown before with, through time, and how the grade schools seem to be always better, and then we get to the high school and it's not as good.
Well, you can't say the high school. You have to say that the pocket we have right now is probably the 7th and 8th grade, which probably made the biggest transition of all in as far as the PA core came in. So they're the ones that are struggling the most right now to get up to where they were before.
But your observation was correct.
Right.
There was a decline as you got to
Yeah,
6%.
yeah, you saw the
Closer to
decline
high
as
school,
it
we just tank.
Yeah, and why is that?
Yeah. That's
So, again, to
Their
answer that question,
hypothesis on why that is.
when we looked at data, we looked at those pockets, we kind of studied 3 things with the departments. Was it a curricular issue? Was it a student issue? Was it a teacher issue? And we kind of answered those kind of questions. And we went with the rule that some of it was a curricular issue, and we made changes where we needed to. You know, we looked at attendance data and things like that. Was it a student issue? Maybe not so much. But, and then we made other issues based on what we found in that data. We made those corrections moving forward.
And Tom, to your point, I think historically we've heard that the jump from 6th to 7th grade is difficult for kids. They come out of the 2 elementary schools, they're used to that young environment, and then they come up here to a 7 to 12 building, and it's intimidating, can be intimidating, a big change. So I think in the last 2 or 3 years under Dr. Pfeiffer's leadership, they've said, how can we affect a better transition? How can we give kids a more comfortable, so hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, we see that result in an evolving of the scores to reflect that they're more comfortable, they're learning at different
Well,
rates.
and one of the things of that 24%, you know, they're able to break that down internally to what are the individual topics that the kids are struggling with. So what do we have to go back and retest? Are our individual assessments aligned properly with the state assessments when they're using it? Is it effective to perform? Is it effective to summative? We've done a lot this year with the review of lesson plans so far for professional development, where we're getting the departments together to go over that stuff, to take a look at either walkthroughs for lesson plan development and assessment development. We have a common assessment for algebra.
Is there a check-in with that? Like, just so next year you don't come in and then all of a sudden the numbers are different again and we've changed 3 things, but we don't know which one actually worked or didn't work, if numbers go up or numbers go down? Like, do you have a check?
Well, that's what I'm trying to be able to get formative assessment results back and then monitor kids so they can adjust and really prepping now, did prepping this year for the spring assessments.
Is there do you have a program to like put certain kids on a watch list or something? I mean, if
Yeah,
we can identify.
kids who are close.
Right.
And then try to get
well, it's not
extra
not if you
interventions.
can, but are you doing anything with it?
Yes, we are. Like one of the things we put in place right now, we were talking about, you know, when they just like unrolled the Common Core to everybody, there's some gaps in some students learning. At the middle school right now, we're having in the rotation is they're kind of having an enrichment for 9 weeks, where they have an individualized education program through something called Apex Learning, where it's going to give them a diagnostic, which is going to determine their strengths and weaknesses and where they are, and it's going to give them tutorials to kind of make up and fill in the gaps. And that is running simultaneous to the course they're taking now. So they're kind of getting remediation on the stuff that they missed. And hopefully our plan is that they will then strengthen those skills to help them better learn the material they have to do this year. Because one builds upon the other, as you know.
So after the tests are over, do you have a mechanism to go back and actually figure out if it actually worked for those students?
Well, we're going to look at the achievement data that we have right now. And another thing we did in 7th and 8th grade, because when you looked at that 24, and we talked about the situation with the kids coming up from 6th grade into 7th grade. Right now, there's a seamless K-12 mathematics program. So they're going to have the same resources from 6th grade as they come into 7th grade. It's the same math program. So they're gonna see the same type of material, the same type of booklets, the same type of everything that they've had before from 6th grade, 5th grade into 7th and 8th grade. They kind of ease their anxiety, they can do the same type of activities.
So, future then, the only thing is, we're gonna see this big drop from 6th to 7th and 8th grade.
We're trying to bridge that.
Then at that point, then you're gonna have to tie it just to anxiety, because everything should be the same.
Not necessarily all to anxiety.
Well, I'm just saying, there's
one of our
transition or whatever
issues.
you wanna call it.
One of our issues in mathematics we find out is the PSSA tests the anchors and standards elements, we call it that at the P8 core, through what they call the 8 mathematical practices. And from our standpoint, task is everything. So what kind of task are they getting in the 7th and 8th grade program that's leading them to be successful on the test? You know, where's the DOK levels of the activities? Right now with the program that we've instilled with,
I don't know what the
depth of knowledge.
Right.
I apologize, I thought I got a little. But, you know, are they getting, you know, enough problem solving? Are they getting enough where they have to critique and to build arguments of, and critique arguments of others? Are they doing those kind of things that they're going to be asked to do, you know, in through the 8 mathematical practices? We now can ensure that if they follow the curriculum that we have right now, we can ensure that the students were getting that. From reviewing lesson plans in the past, like Dr. Piper said, we were noticing some patterns that, you know, in the 7th and 8th grade, there was a lot of the instructional technique of I do, we do, you do. It kind of lends itself to be very procedural in nature, and it didn't get to the higher order thinking skills that they needed to go. So this kind of corrected that issue. So we're going to see how that plays out by how well our students do the following year. So there's a lot of, although there's a lot of variables, there's some things that we can look at to see how they play.
So at the new mathematics curriculum is talking about, next year we're gonna see the 7th graders who are used to that. But the 8th graders will be this year's 7th graders. They'll still have that.
Well, we all kind of rolled it out at once.
Yes.
So it's their first year across the board. And what we're kind of feedback we're getting is like, boy, this is hard. This is different. We have to think. You know, we didn't have to, you know, the problems are challenging. And, you know, we're hoping, and we did a lot of research into the program, that we're actually meeting the rigor level of the exam through their activities and stuff.
So, start to see a change maybe next year, but how long will this get maybe before really you see the full effects of that?
Change, you know, we're hoping that we're gonna see some positive movement northward.
Right.
But I would probably look 2-3 years down the road. You know, I'm thinking that when we first got involved in curriculum change back about 3 or 4 years ago, we really didn't have the resources, but we did write curriculum in K1 and 2, where the kids have some background in this. Maybe that could be the reason why that they say our 3rd grade scores right off the bat are kind of higher than everybody else's, because they had a couple of years under their belt, even though it's not this program. It's closer to what we wanted than, you know, some other, you know, the middle school was disjointed from the elementary schools, we now bridge that gap. So we kind of made a lot of strides to help meet the needs of our students and to make them more successful.
No, that's nothing new. I mean, I don't know about other districts, but that's nothing new with us. You have this kind of different.
Yes, and we're addressing that as well, because that's a matter that we want to do. So we want to move it forward, move it forward, move it forward. So that's pretty much what I have today. Like I said, you have the hard copy, the entire presentation and more in there that you can look at. So if anybody has any questions or any more, if not, feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Like I said, I brought that other report that you asked me about, which also gets involved in how well we're doing on each anchor standard, eligible content by student, by teacher, by, and you know, all the other things we talked about too. So that would become too daunting for this kind of presentation. Right?
Excellent stuff. Any director, any questions? Thank
you.
One quick comment, Ed. Your context was helpful, and I think it helps reconcile what we thought we might have seen in the paper with what we heard from like U.S. News and World Report 2 years ago, saying that the high school was in the top 10% in the state or whatever, and a couple of years ago, our elementary schools were ranked top 10% of the state, so we know we found some issues that you guys are looking at, which is great, but I think that helps provide the right context for the successes we've had and a couple of the works we need to fix, but it helps us understand. So, thank you.
Can I ask one quick question before we move on? So you talked a lot about the students and the testing and the curriculum. So if any teachers were switched around to meet specific needs, I'm assuming that the teachers will be tracked too, so different groups don't fall off. Like if anybody has to circle back around and do development or whatever. So I'm assuming if staff was swapped around, that they would be tracked as well.
What do you mean by, which ones this report I was referring to before, that I was not part of this particular report. We do look at individual teachers. We look at how their students did, what their performances were on the state exams. We also looked at, how the students performed in their classrooms. How do the classroom grades compare to how they're performing on the test? And is there any correlation between those? Are we going to continue to track that? Yes. We're going to continue to track that for the tested grade subjects. But if you're no longer in a tested subject, we're not going to continue to track that at this particular moment in time because there's not a tested grade there for which to make that correlation.
Janine, are you asking if we've made a shift of personnel and if a group that had been doing well suddenly drops by 5 points, are we going to look at the teacher for that group? Is that
Right, so if you had a lower grade teacher, and let's say that was a testing year, and that group of kids did poorly, right? And that teacher was shifted to a different level, a different grade level. My concern is just that, what's the evaluation process for the teacher, even if it's not a state standard testing year, to make sure that when that new group of kids that might have them at a higher level gets to the next testing level, those scores don't drop off because something was missed?
Now, forgive me, but the way I'm reading the thing is, are we talking about the person or the teachers that would hypothetically go up to the next level? How do we evaluate those teachers, or the ones that are now teaching the
ones that go up.
The ones that go up.
Yeah.
They're still going to be evaluated under Act 82.
Okay.
Okay, and we have the Danielson framework for which we evaluate teachers, and their Act 82 performance will be there as well. They just won't have PVOS data that goes into their Act 82 because they're not really a tested grade any longer.
Okay.
But they'll still have the building score that goes in there. They'll still have the SLO, which is what they have to show and demonstrate that the students are not only growing, but also reaching proficiency levels at that particular. So there is data points that we can evaluate them from there.
And are we still requiring the students to do remediation?
For the Keystone exams? Yes.
Even though the state pushed that date back to 2019?
Although they did push the graduation requirement back, all the other parts of Chapter 4 are still in place. So we still have our obligation to take a student who hasn't been proficient at that particular level. They have not relieved us of our obligation to continue to work with them until they reach the minimum proficiency level of the Keystone exam.
It's complex and it's conflicting messages from the state, so.
Right. So that's the only
we
part.
remove the requirement to graduate to have this, but we still have to administer them and keep them proficient, so they can.
So our remediation is during the school day. All right. So for kids that aren't college bound, right, and they might be vocationally bound, even that they're not going to VOTEC, we are taking kids out of electives that could drive their futures, and we're making them remediate. Like, have we ever considered doing remediation at the end of the school day, after the bell rings at 2:07, that would allow those students that aren't college bound to do some electives, to develop an interest and possibly a skill set, because ultimately we want them to be productive, tax-paying citizens, not living off the system and contributing. So to me, that factors in there, and you've taken a period away, and our students remediate more than once.
Janine, you've hit on a topic that educators a lot smarter than at least myself have struggled with. The state and every other state has looked at the curriculum, and Ed just talked about how they've compressed what you're learning. They're pushing more material down, younger grades. They're making it more rigorous. They're creating a curriculum that is a college prep curriculum, and they're asking all of our residents, all of the citizens of the country, to learn this college prep material. And they're saying, regardless if you're going to be a carpenter or a plumber or a mathematician, you need to learn. We think you should learn this stuff because we want to be competitive globally. And every school district is struggling with the exact same thing. How do we educate all of our kids, engage them in topics that they're interested in, that they're going to do well in vocationally? It's a difficult.
Well,
journey.
hopefully, with the talks from PDE right now, hopefully in the near future, we will see different standards for different tracks of students, as opposed to an all-in-one program or testing like we have now.
And that was one of the things Rivera talked to us about when we had the meeting. You know, and I think one of the things we talked about at each of the building levels is how do we provide remediation, not just within the school day, but what are avenues to think outside the box to do that? Is the transportation area for school to do that? You know, how do we bring people in and provide tutoring based on how kids perform at a certain level? And I'd rather do that sooner or later. If we could do it parallel, you know, I don't want to wait till the end of the school year until we get the summative assessment. The formative assessments, when the kids are struggling, we should be able to identify, hey, he's struggling with linear equations. You know, we need to give extra work and we need to provide extra resources to that student on there. So it's something we're always developing, try to do a better job of.
And what, if any, remediation does the IU have? So I know some districts, I was out at Western Beaver, like they do their remediation with one teacher, technology-based, it's all online at the end of their school day, so only one teacher is staying. Now that's at a high school level. So, you know, what resources do we have access to that can be part of that equation?
Sure.
Just to address some of the issues that you have there, we went through a lot of cycles to get to where we are right now. At the end of, I guess, last year or maybe before, we did a 2-year study, and we did try the after-school program. We did try the Saturday classes, and they were never well attended at all. So we did try that avenue, and when we started talking about what was we getting a bang for our buck, we were down below 7% proficiency rates the second time around. Where prior to when we had the classes before, like we're doing now, we're up to 24%. So we dropped 18% just because kids that didn't come to take the remediation. Now, when you were talking about this program, we do have a blended learning environment in these supplemental instruction classes where they are having a teacher as well as a system called Apex Learning, where they're meeting their diagnostic needs and only tackling the situations where they have and the problems that they have in certain content area. And they also have a teacher there to help them explain the way through. So not everybody's taking the same path to remediation as they will. So this is what we found based on data was the best avenue for us to do.
And we also have the foundations classes.
Right, that's what I'm referring to. You know, we kind of went back to those because when you dropped 18% the second time around, you know, and the kids weren't coming to the other classes, you know, it's kind of defeating the purpose. We're paying teachers to come and no kids came.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that those changes come down the pipe sooner, because if you're a VOTEC student, you shouldn't have to, your standard shouldn't be the Keystone, it should be the NOCME.
And that's what Turzai
Yeah.
put across, and I think there's bipartisan support for that.
And there's another standard that's already out there that the students take. There's the NOCME and there's the Keystones and there's one other. It's vocationally based.
I
So,
might have done it.
Yeah, but on there is the NIMS.
Yeah, the NIMS, is that what it was? Let me see. I looked that one up too, as part of it.
As you're talking to your legislature about some of these changes, you can also ask them when they're going to take the financial multiplier and apply that to all the revenue. So
there are people pushing that.
fantastic.
The National Institute for Metalworking Skills Certification, the NIMS test, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So because that that formula is messed up.
Correct. Well, the new formula, the bipartisan formula that they agreed on, does a lot to fix the problem if they only applied it to a fraction of money. If they applied that to a larger portion, then things would be radically different. So, we'll join you in your conversation with the legislature. All right. Great conversation. I know it was long, but I think it was valuable. So thank you for that. Keep going.
We'll go with the principals. Mrs. Dawson.
Well, first let me start by saying happy birthday, Michelle, and you are so appreciated. You're always helping me with the website, because anything I have questions about, so thank you for everything. I can't follow your presentation edit also, I will just try to do quickly. You've got a crafting corner, so basically it's summarizing what we've done. The play before eat is, the initiative is still going very well. I'm so busy during the day, but I'm realizing I don't have as many discipline issues, especially at recess time, which is great. Firefighter Phil came to our school and did some fire safety with our students in assembly K through 4. Some of you were there at the rocket launch for our 6th graders, another great success, a beautiful day. And then I also highlighted STEAM. This time it was 5th and 6th grade STEAM. Mr. Ficcarelli and Mrs. Zorenda run our 5th and 6th grade STEAM during recess, and they're doing some great things today. They were making a rubber bouncy ball, which was really exciting, a little messy. And then just some reminders. I also included a calendar for you, and then and a staff meeting agenda and insert, just so you can kind of stay current with what we're focusing on. We're focusing a lot on data. At case one of our staff meetings went through this in more focused and just crafting kind of data. We have our data meetings this week where we've created data targets in just grade levels, and then using our study island, using our STAR, using all of the assessments that we have, we're focusing on what you've talked about, and we're picking out the students who aren't showing growth, who are staying stagnant, coming up with like action plans on what we can do to move those students, and also focusing always on proficiency, because that's something that you want the students to be able to do, is just show that mastery. So we're kind of just trying to tie it all in.
College on the 18th, where they're going to be working with students from schools all over the area, in addition to community leaders such as the former CEO of the Salvation Army, Israel Gaither, and Sean Casey, who founded the Miracle League of South Hills, to discuss community service and how they can encourage community service in their communities. So hopefully that team of juniors is going to come back to us with ways that we can increase community service here in Carlynton. On the side of community service, again, Operation Gratitude is wrapping up. Mrs. Verbanek, who is our family and consumer science teacher, had a candy drive. So all that leftover Halloween candy have been collected. We've collected over 50 pounds of candy that's going to be donated to our troops overseas. So that's going to be wrapping up. I believe the last day for donations is November 9th. If anybody is still looking to make a donation, they've actually asked that no more candy be donated, but instead monetary donations for the shipping, strictly the shipping of that candy. But we're very proud of the efforts of those classes. And lastly, Mr. Wilson, our athletic director, was just informed this past Friday that we have a senior that was just chosen to be the KDKA Extra Effort Award winner. So Sophia Carrasco has been awarded the KDKA Extra Effort Award. It's given to a student who excels not only in the classroom, but in athletics and in the community. There will be an assembly on Thursday, November 17th, where Bob Papiani and KDKA will come out to present that award. So we're very excited for Sophia, and we want to congratulate her on her efforts.
And that assembly's at 1:30. And everybody here is welcome to attend. Come out. Mr. Christie.
Thank you. I'd like to advise the board on our real estate tax collection. It's the largest source of revenue in our budget. Through October, we've collected $11,966,000. That represents 91% of our budgeted revenue. And when you compare that to the 15-16 school year, Last year we collected $11,176,000, which was 89%. So our collections are above last year, which is a good sign. The revenues. Thank you.
And that concludes the administrative reports.
Okay, I see we have a board committee report on our list. Joe, George, you guys have an update on Parkway West.
Oh. Well, we had a meeting last Tuesday, and,
They approved the contract.
yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing to do.
The HVAC program.
No, totally.
What?
So, I think we're all on daylight savings
I just-
time, by bedtime.
Yeah.
There's so many great things going on out there. I'm so excited by it.
The open house?
Yeah, an open house on Tuesday night. And, you know, that seemed to be pretty well attended.
Their enrollment has been up the last 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely, yeah, and, you know, they've got some exciting programs like the HVAC program that we just approved, which is gonna have a lot of components. From every indication, kids will do well in that program, will be snapped up by industry, especially as we can get them out through that program. Partnered with the Beaver County Community College for an aviation program. I think I talked about that a while back, but it's really up and running now, and they've done some great things to the building that we tend to use for our bird retreats. They really, you know, no cost to Parkway West, fixed that up in there, and it seems like things are doing very well with that. Not only is it all sorts of aviation related programming, being a certified drone pilot to, you know, even relay aircraft pilot, on the way to that. So, as always, exciting things going on. Gary, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it. I think that meeting was pretty quick.
Yeah.
On Tuesday night, so.
One quick note for the principals. In the past, we've had your students come occasionally, and if you have a student that does great, we can bring them up and have them do a short presentation, or have them up and read a pledge, sing a song, play an instrument, whatever. So we haven't had one in a couple of weeks or months. If you want to think of that, and let your colleagues know. We'd love to see the students, and love to see what they're doing, and keeps us in touch. So, thanks. Moving on to the rest of the meeting, we are gonna hit the miscellaneous section, and I'll entertain a motion to approve, number one, the additions to the 2016-2017 conference and field trip request as submitted. And number two, the proposed board meeting calendar, which is designated option number 3 for the first half of the 2017 school year. Do I have a motion for those 2 items?
So moved.
Moved by the second. Moved and second, any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Under section 2, finance, I'll entertain a motion to approve the following 3 items. Number 1, the September 2016 athletic fund report with an ending balance of $3,406.62. Number 2, the September 2016 activities fund report with an ending balance of $64,340.19. And number 3, the November 2016 real estate tax refunds for the Borough of Crafton as submitted. Do I have a motion for those 3 items? Thank you. Moved. Do I have a second? Moved and second. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Under section 3, personnel, excuse me, I'll entertain a motion to approve the following 2 items. The additions to the 2016-2017 day-to-day substitute list as submitted, and this was revised. And number 2, the additions to the 2016-2017 supplemental activities list as submitted. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Moved. Do I have a second? Moved and second. Any discussion?
I have a question. We had asked if Gary sent us, job descriptions for some of these positions. It seems like some of them are basically the same, but working two different roles.
There was a conversation a couple of weeks ago about sort of just taking another look at the supplementals.
Right.
Do they all still make sense, or, that's a great question, so.
I think some of that too is we go into negotiation sessions, because those are contractually listed. We'll have to take a look.
The current list is all listed in the contract. Good, thanks for. Any other questions? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Under section 4, policy, I'll entertain a motion to approve the following 2 items. Number 1, the first reading of policies 200, 202, 203, 203.1, 204, 206, 207, 208, and 209. And I'm sorry for that long list of numbers. Those are net of the items that we discussed earlier in exec session that we chose to not move forward. So those are the ones that were not questioned in exec session. So if I can reiterate, 200, 202, 203, 203.1, 204, 206, 207, 208, 209. And then item number 2, the first reading of the revision to policy number 7 as submitted for the full policy review and recommendations of PSBA. Do I have a motion for those 2 items? Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Under section 5, student services, we have 1 item. I'll entertain a motion to approve the matter concerning student SM 161701 as submitted. Do I have such a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Second. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Old business. Does any director have any old business they would like to discuss? If not, new business. Any director of new business they would like to discuss? So, Dr. Pfeiffer reminded us of the conversation about the need for the printing equipment upgrade that we've had in the proposal that has been given to us. If any director would like to make a motion to approve give a brief description of the.
Sure, we have a lease currently with the Wilson Group for all of our copy machines and printers and so forth. They approached us. We've had repeat issues with copiers, both at Grafton and Carnegie. We've had issues with some of our printers that are several years old. So we already currently are on a 60-month lease with them that goes until 2018. They approached us with an offer to renew the lease for another 60 months at a rate a little bit less than what we're paying now, but it would include 2 additional copy machines at the elementary schools to help with the volume there and reduce redundancy, and also to replace our printers.
I so move.
To accept the proposal from the Wilson Group for the 60-month lease at a cost of,
And it costs,
$3,000. At a cost, there is a cost to this.
That was a cost of, $3,095 for 60 months.
We're paying almost $6,200 a month currently, so I don't understand that figure.
Yeah.
I don't think that was all.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should hold off to get the exact.
I would recommend
I will offer to the other side.
2 weeks.
Strongly recommend that.
I can see this.
So, if there's a,
Hold me up to time.
if there's a motion on the table that hasn't been.
It hasn't been seconded, so the die is accepted.
Okay,
Or
so,
George can withdraw it. I will withdraw it.
thank you very
There's
much.
no longer a motion on the table.
Thank you. All right, so a good item that we need to get taken care of, but we'll get our ducks in a row and have it approved at the next meeting. Okay. Any other new business from any director? If not, we'll move on to open forum. Does any member of the audience, would they like to, oh, I'm sorry, I don't see anybody, we'll move on. Would anyone in the audience like to bring up any open forum?
So I just have, I'm wondering, do we have, who's doing National Honor Society these days?
Yeah, for the record, could you state your name, please?
Really? Janine Schultz, I reside in Crafton.
Thank you.
National Honor Society, who is doing it?
Did Chelsea Chris take a look at that?
I imagine that those would have been approved tonight after they
Yeah,
had
it was
been, yes.
right in here.
Yes.
Chelsea?
I didn't have the list though. Where are you referring to?
Jamie popped around.
Jamie Smith.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Jamie signing it.
Marisa Racine.
Who?
Marisa Racine.
She's Spanish teacher.
Okay.
She's National Junior Honor Society.
Good. Any other open forum questions? Any board member have any open forum questions? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Do I hear a second? Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Stay away from